Cool chair.
Hey, DJ, 1 second.
Take your time, man. Thank you. Hey,
Yeah.
man.
Hey.
Support the troops is great. That's a great shirt.
Oh man, I was just at Disney World with my kids and we met Darth Vader and he said, I acknowledge your support.
That's perfect.
Right. It was the perfect line. My kids like lost their minds.
Sure, dude. Acknowledge your support is great. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. How you doing? How long
I'm
were you?
doing I was there for just 3 days. My mom like takes all the grandkids when they're 4, and then like just by themselves. And we went too with our kids. But now the kids are a little older. Mine are 9 and 6, and all their cousins are like older than that. And so she does grandma camp every summer. And so for grandma camp this year, it was like, okay, we're all going back to Disney World together. And so it was an awesome
Great.
experience. Yeah,
Grandma,
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, it is. It's been awesome. I was the youngest of my three brothers. At first, the idea was the parents weren't allowed to be there, like it's supposed to be spend time with your cousins and like get independence kind of thing. But since I didn't have kids, my wife and I like were always the ones that were helping. And when it came to us having kids, my mom was like, I can't do this without you guys, so you got to like keep helping. So I've been doing it for 15 years, 1 week every summer. And
That's
yeah,
so
it's awesome.
what a great like family thing. Like I've
Yeah.
never heard of grandma camp, but it's such a brilliant idea to like get everybody closer and have a different sort of family experience. Yeah, we would go for a week, about a maybe 2 weekends, more like a week to Pawleys Island, which is in South Carolina.
Okay.
And it's just sort of it's a beach, and then the entire family would get two beach houses, one directly on the beach and one just across the street. And
Nice.
like the entire family. And it was the most fun thing ever because you're around all your cousins and uncles and aunts and
Yeah.
everybody on the beach, and you're boogie boarding. And then it's adjacent to Myrtle Beach. So it's not really that trashy, but it's like not expensive. So that was just so fun. We did that for years. It was great.
Nice. Have you been back there as an adult?
No, I haven't. I feel like it would be fun because I would remember the two cottages, but yeah, I would definitely go back. They tried to organize sort of an adult version of it, kind of, because some of the people in my era have kids, but not really that many. Really, just like my cousin has two kids, and then my other cousins are, millennials who just aren't going to
Yeah.
have kids or can't afford kids or whatever. One of them's in show business, sort of, and yeah, and my younger sister is sort of like, you know, figuring that out. It's different now, man. It just is a different. That's why I hear that and it sounds so cool because people just aren't having kids and they're not, doing family stuff in the way that used to be when I was growing up, I feel like, which is a shame.
Yeah, Graham Camp is really old school. Like, this year was a little different, but in the past, like, it's always been no phones or like, I mean, they're not playing video games. Like, it's all like outside camping and doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that's been awesome. Like, I when I had kids, or when I first started having kids, like, I wasn't anti like tablets or anything like that. And I'm still not like 100% against tablets or anything, but just the idea that I think everybody just grows up now, like anytime you have any sort of downtime or any moment, yeah, you're just constantly being distracted, being pulled away to some digital environment. It's like, oh man, we're missing out. Like, I recently took social media off my phone and I felt like I was unplugged from the matrix, man. Like, I still check it on the computer, but like barely ever compared to when you can just sit and pull it out and it just scrolls forever.
Yeah, I try and stay off it, but I have to do it for my job.
Right, right.
It's a promotional tool. And sadly, I should be on it more. Like I'm not
Right.
on it enough. I should be posting on Instagram every day. I should be like on X much more, especially in the Bitcoin, and crypto space. Like,
Hmm.
Um, but I just don't really like it. It like makes
Right.
me think it's just not interesting to me. And I kind of, you said the Matrix, it's like I kind of see I just sort of see it for what it is. So I'm like, this is very tricky. You're being very tricky. The algorithm, it's all sneaky. I'm not into it. So it's a
Right.
strange relationship I have to have with social media, but I'm also in a weird position where I'm not like, grappling for views or fans or anything like that. I'm not kind of like help, 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 please somebody watch me. I have an audience.
Yeah.
And it's just really but it is like that's how you connect with a certain demographic. They're just on there every day. They're just I'll never forget I had a friend, Dustin Chafin, this very funny stand-up comic. Very funny. And he kind of he said, yeah, I really gotta, limit my screen time, And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I looked and I was like online for 8 hours yesterday. And I was like,
Mm.
what were you doing? It was just Instagram, man. And I blew my mind. I was like, you were on Instagram for 8 hours yesterday? And he's like, I know, man. It's just because he doesn't drink. So,
Okay.
so I think in some ways, everybody's addicted to something. And so in some ways, he is like, I don't know if you go to the gym. I absolutely know you do, but like some people it's that, and then
Yeah.
some people it's this. And for him, I think it is Instagram. I think he just goes on there and is just scrolling, looking for those dopamine hits. Oh, this is funny.
Hmm.
That was cute. This is crazy. And it's just, some people are on social media all day. That's just kind of what they do. And I know a girl, Tiffany Fong. Have you ever heard of her?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
So she's like, and I like her a lot. I think people have strong opinions about her. But I like her. And when I met her, I talked to her and I just realized she just was like, I am going to be on X doing a very strategic thing every single day, all the time. I'm going to use this platform and become famous in this space. And it totally worked. But she's absolutely glued to her phone all the time. It's not even as you're talking, she's checking. She's like on the phone as she's talking to you.
Yeah.
And Michael Saylor is the same way. He's for a different reason. But
Right. Right.
when I went in and met with him, somebody else knew him and they were like, so was he just checking the charts the whole time you guys were talking? And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I guess so. I mean, he had his computer because that's who I mean,
Right.
he is that, Yeah, he is really, really something. But, this social media for a lot of people is like, that's how that's how this works. It does not work without X for some of these people. And so I'm trying to like force myself to go on X a little bit more. We finally kind of have our assets sort of we're finally kind of in self custody, sort of in that territory and doing that. And but for a while, I didn't want to post about it because you get scared that you could get hacked. We don't have
Yeah.
we don't have some huge BTC holdings or something like that, but like it's enough. And then I'm a public figure, and so it's worrisome. But I feel like now I'll be more comfortable talking about Bitcoin a lot because it's very funny. The amount of the amount I talk about Bitcoin in real life is not uh, represented in that X sphere because I talk about Bitcoin in real
Yeah.
life a lot. It's just a funny thing. I did some joke, was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, "Oh, are you like a Bitcoin guy?" Yeah, they're kind of like, "Oh, you guys have a crypto?" I'm like, yeah, you want to be bored for the next 30 hours? Like, because most people just aren't I feel like in some ways we get a bad rap a little bit because like it's like being acolytes or they just it's people either see it as bullshit or a cult. I think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of that right now. We're at this kind of inflection point. And then the thing that I talk about all the time, and this is what I try and discuss like when I talk to Injective or Bitcoin Las Vegas, like the thing that we have to do is we have to help ourselves stop seeming like an exclusionary club.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, and this has been happening for a long time, but a lot of people feel left out. And then that makes them angry. And then as the price goes up, then they're mad at themselves for not listening to us. And so then they feel like, well, I missed the train. And we're like, no, you didn't. And they're like, yes, I did. And we're like, no, you didn't. And it just
Yeah.
becomes this, I just, it's like the thing that I struggle to figure out. I did a good job with NFTs. I did a special about NFTs that was an NFT. It's kind of meta comedy. And I figured out a good way to describe NFTs so that people understood them. But I think Bitcoin lacks this like clean one line. It's digital gold. It doesn't work. It's
Right.
nobody hears that and is like, oh, okay, now I get it. It doesn't. That's not how it doesn't
It
work.
makes it sound like it's fake gold for sure.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's digital gold. It's fool's gold. It's got a vibe to it. But I find that my jumping off point lately has been just buy $5 worth of Bitcoin. Just buy $5 worth of Bitcoin today. Buy $5 a week. That's all you. And the reason I say that is because people still don't understand. It's fascinating. You know this. It's fascinating to be on the inside of this world and looking out and having people be like, "Well, I can't afford a Bitcoin. They're like $100,000," and I'm like, "That it. You don't have to. You can't. You don't have to
Right.
buy a Bitcoin. They're infinitely divisible, basically. I mean, in terms of what would be needed." So that's why I say just buy $5 worth of Bitcoin. And I've gotten one guy who I tour with, he understands. And it took me, I would say, several years of hearing the Winklevoss twins say to us, it's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin. It's always a good
Mhm.
time. Because I kept like texting them and being like, hey, there's a pullback. Now do you think we should get in? This was in 2018 when it was $8,000. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, now it's at 7,600. Do you think it's a good time to buy? And I couldn't understand what they were saying, which was it doesn't matter. Just buy Bitcoin. Try and build to a whole coin. And that's another thing that I like to talk about is like the concept of being a whole coiner and what that means philosophically. I try a little bit and kind of explain that. That's what I did with this kid that I uh work with is I kind of helped him understand like just build to one coin. And that would be you have no idea how important that's going to be, you know? So it's a lot of little pieces of philosophy that you kind of have to click together and a lot of understanding that's really hard to get to. And I think that's why it's so obtuse. But yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Like, so for me, I didn't know anything about like the Federal Reserve or fractional reserve banking or really how banks worked at all.
at all.
Until I had a house painting business when the housing bubble crashed. And so I didn't want like my goal wasn't to paint houses. My goal was to be a documentary or a filmmaker. And so I was using that house painting business just as a way of making money to enable my career, like to jumpstart my career. And so when the housing bubble crashed, I thought, okay, like all these people got caught up in this bubble. I don't want to get caught up in the next bubble. And so I tracked down a bunch of people that had predicted the crash and interviewed them and everything. And so that's what kind of led me into this space. And I actually first was asked publicly about Bitcoin in 2013. And what I said then was that I saw how it could have value in, you know, getting around the government in places like Africa, like where they don't necessarily have like the land titles they need, stuff like that, like putting that on blockchain. Could I saw the potential in that. And the other thing I thought is you have countries like China or, you know, Venezuela, where people are trying to get their money out of these countries. And so I thought, okay, that it makes sense that Bitcoin would be such an amazing leap forward in their ability to do that. But what I said at the time was that, like, I'm risking everything I have on making these documentaries on the economy and the financial crisis and the bigger bubble that's coming next. And so I didn't feel like I could take that risk. I said, okay, I'm putting all my risk into this, which is obviously putting all your eggs in one basket. But so I've bought gold and silver over the years, but haven't actually had Bitcoin until recently. Despite talking about it 12 years ago, I certainly wish I'd bought some. Um,
Okay.
so I guess I wanted to ask you, like, how did you first hear about Bitcoin and get into Bitcoin?
Well, I think every Bitcoiner who's like really into it has a similar story to you. It's their version of it. Like there's this guy who owns a bar here called Pub Key, and he's just a guy who has been in it since like 2013. And you hear that and you're like, oh my God, that guy's got to have $500 million or whatever. And but then when you think about it, his story was a little different, but just the same. He bought it when it was so fucking cheap, and then when it got to $2,000, his father was like, "If you don't sell this, you're an idiot." And he was just like, "Okay, you're
Yeah.
right." And so then he sold all of it. You know, probably made a crazy huge profit, but not like if he had waited 5 years. You know, but it at the time it doesn't make sense. So we heard about it from uh the Winklevoss twins. I did a show called Silicon Valley, and they did a cameo in the season finale of the first season, right? And I
Right.
remember sort of I have a joke about them in the show. I make some joke about them. And then when I met them there, they were nice, but it wasn't, I didn't even have a conversation with them. And then
Yeah.
Kate and I, that's my wife, Kate. Kate and I were walking in New York City, where I am right now, and we're walking. And there's these two 6'6", like handsome men, look exactly alike, walking towards us. And I go to Kate and I go, this has happened before, by the way, where I saw a dog. It was the most handsome dog I've ever seen in my life. And I look up, I was like, who would own a dog like that? And it was Steven Spielberg. And I was like, Kate, is that Spielberg? And she's like, yes, TJ, that's Steven Spielberg. And I was like, maybe I should go talk to him, right? And she's like, yes, TJ, you've been in like 5 of his movies. Yes, go over and talk to him. So I turn to Kate and go, is that the Winklevoss twins? Are those the Winklevoss? And she goes, yeah, who else? What 6'6" twins? What are you talking about? Of course that's them. And I'm like, oh, we should say hi. She's like, yes, TJ, you were on a fucking TV show with them. Yes. So I went up to him. I go, hey, what's up, guys? They're like, oh, yeah. And they were like, where do you guys live? And I was like, I live in New York. Where do you live? They're like, we live in New York too. And so they asked for my number. We exchanged numbers, and we went and we had like dinner with them or something. And later we became really good friends with them. We've seen King Kong the musical with them. But it's like it's interesting. They're in a very specific and different place right now politically, and I can understand it, but I have an opinion about it. But we went to dinner with them, and they said we're doing this. I'm kind of like, so what are you guys doing right now? And they're like, well, we're uh doing this thing with Bitcoin. Have you heard of Bitcoin? And I was like, kind of. And then I asked them about it, but then I quickly saw that they didn't want to like spend their time talking to me about it.
Yeah.
But they sort of were like, we were doing this thing called Bitcoin. We're geniuses. We invented Facebook. But if you want to learn about it, you should look into it, kind of. And then I just started reading about it, and I fell into the rabbit hole. People are like, do the Winklevi orange pill you? I was like, no, man, I orange pilled myself. I just suddenly it ramped up, and I think almost in a hypomanic way, I just started consuming all this information about it. And I started to teach my wife and during the pandemic, I really like gave myself a master's degree in blockchain. But when I started explaining it to my wife, she's a maxi, so she's a Bitcoin maximalist. Whereas I'm interested in blockchain and different currencies and technologies and smart contracts and all that stuff. But she just feels, and this is her famous line that Michael Saylor was like, yeah, when he heard her say it, and it's, she's like, why buy Pepsi when you can buy Coke? Yeah.
That example doesn't work for me. I'm a Pepsi.
Yeah, I bet you Ethereum. Uh, so
No, I mean in real life, I love Pepsi.
I believe it. I can't believe it. I believe it. Okay, then. So she says, look, it's buying couture. It's you when you buy Chanel, the value always goes up. If you buy H&M, which would be, I guess, almost meme coin level. But if you buy, so to her, it's like you must get the best thing. And the idea of the scarcity of it, that's what attracted her to it first.
Mhm.
She kind of was like, wait, there's only 21 million? I'm like, yeah. And that's when it kind of hit her. She goes, so there's no way to make more of this thing. I was like, no. And she just got it. She goes, the price action is obviously with supply and demand,
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah. And she was like, all right, buy Bitcoin. So it's
Now,
good.
was inflation a factor in your guys' like thought process or like the dollar, or was it more you just saw the potential of Bitcoin as being something new, not necessarily something as an alternative? You know what I
As
mean?
a hedge, yeah, of course. As a hedge against inflation, to me, I think that was more, from my perspective, one of the many assets that Bitcoin has. One of the
Hmm.
very many. So it would be a hedge against inflation, the scarcity. I think Kate also, not, to get away from the couture thing of it, Kate also really connected with what you connected with, which was this is a way that you could get a Saudi Arabian woman
Hmm.
or princess who's been kidnapped and they're threatening to honor kill her. This would be a way that people could get money to her, and if she was able to escape, she would have that money anywhere in the world, you know. And
Right.
so that was very appealing. Also, kind of the freedom of it, and that Bitcoin is freedom thing, which is really true too, And so I think I just saw a lot of different things about it, and the inflation hedge was like important as well. But now I don't know if it will. It might still decouple from the market, but now with the institutional adoption and the ETFs and hopefully global strategic reserves in various sovereign places, um, it might kind of become indelibly tied to uh countries and the dollar and all this stuff in a way that just is different than we all could have expected. But it's also people got so angry about the institutional adoption and like I was like, how did you think this was going to work? Hold on, it's starting to rain. Give me 1 second.
You're good.
Um, so yeah, it's sort of I was kind of like, how did you expect to get mass adoption without something like ETFs? And I think
Right.
a lot of people are like, that's not in line with what this is supposed to be and all this. And I'm like, you can't you can't kind of say like anarchy, but mass adoption. You can't be like fuck the whole system, but we want all of you to use this thing. It's like it doesn't. Those things are antithetical, I think, in some ways, and
Yeah.
so um, and so
It's
for
like a
my,
punk band. Once they get popular, then everybody's like, "Oh yeah, fuck that."
it's also I think it's we're punk rock, but we want this to be pop. And
Yeah.
it's you can't have both. That's not how this works. You can't be K-pop and fucking Sex Pistols. It's just that's not exactly how it can work. And the other thing that frustrates me is like, if we really do believe that Bitcoin is freedom and that everybody should have Bitcoin, then you have to be okay with certain things like institutions getting involved. And we're not going to be able to suffer this level of volatility every 4 years. Just can't.
Mhm.
That's not how you get people to invest in an asset. And if it's less volatile, then these institutions will go from telling people 1% of your portfolio should be Bitcoin to 7% of your first three, but probably then 7% of your portfolio should be Bitcoin. And if it is, and you can have part of your 401k as Bitcoin, then that is going to be a massive uptick of the price of Bitcoin. It would just, if everybody had their 401k and like 7% of their retirement or whatever was in Bitcoin, that's how it just goes to $1 million a coin, you know? And so I think the thing is it's like, I want people to own Bitcoin because it's an asset. I mean, this is very Sailor Disciple. Boy, have I fallen asleep listening to his fucking interviews more than once. But you know it's going to go up. This is this thing that the sooner you buy it, the more upside, but also you buy it because it's heading somewhere and it has been. And like I've been fortunate to watch that be the case since 2017, essentially, which strangely is 8 years. But it's been fascinating to see the ETF. We know the girl that came up with the idea for an ETF, Lavinia Branca. And it was just fascinating to like hear her explain why she and Kathy Woods were figured this out, that this was going to actually happen. And I think, I was there. Were you at the conference in Vegas?
I actually missed that. My kids had their end of school year program and they sang some songs, so I skipped it.
I
I'm
think that
going to go though.
the singing and the songs is probably more worthwhile in terms of a life experience. But um, I always forget his last, but the strike guy, he kind of unveiled this borrowing against your Bitcoin service, and it's
Okay.
I think there are other ones, but he's kind of the highest profile. His name's Jack something. It's just his last name's hard to pronounce, but he sort of unveiled. He's like, Strike, you can borrow this much against your Bitcoin. I forget. I feel like it was like 60% or something. And then the length that you want to borrow and your interest is going to be this. And he said, and this is the most important thing. He's like, but we don't like use your Bitcoin. We just
Mhm.
we're
Right.
gonna hold it. We will hedge against it, but we're not gonna take your Bitcoin and invest it somewhere else. In the sense that if
Yeah,
you're
where you
like,
can't get it back.
I want my Bitcoin back, it's like, well, it's locked over here, and because that's what happens with FTX and Gemini had that with Earn. And so when he explained that, I kind of felt this whole audience just be like, what? And the reason is because that is the future. Now we've seen that what you would do is you borrow against your Bitcoin and then it will become more valuable fast enough that it will pay for the interest. So people they're getting money from you, but it's really just the Bitcoin is making its own money kind of. And that's how you'll have liquidity without while still hodling. Because that's what
Right.
all the hodlers were sort of like, this is amazing. I mean, it's that joke about uh Bitcoin Bitcoin millionaires are still illiquid because they won't sell their Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
they're always like, hey, you want to split the check? And it's like, don't you have like 100 Bitcoin? It's like, yeah, but I can never spend it. It's just hoarding. It's like the miser who Jack actually did he told this story on stage, but it's the miser who buries his gold in his backyard, and then he digs it up just to look at it, and then he buries it again. But he's like very poor. He lives in a terrible house, all that stuff, because he just doesn't want to spend any of the gold. And so now it's interesting to see like this is how Bitcoiners will be liquid by and still hodl their Bitcoin. So it's just very interesting to see how it like I don't think I could have understood that was possible before.
Yeah,
I
right.
think I thought
Well,
it was Bitcoin.
yeah, I mean, there's companies that do that with like gold and silver.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and the thing that scares me a little bit is that it kind of reminds me of home equity loans, where you have your house and all this value in your house, and as long as your house is going up and up, you can take money out of the house, and a lot of people did that leading into the housing crash. I screened my first documentary, The Housing Bubble, in Acapulco in 2018, which is a big Bitcoin spot. And I remember talking to people there who they were traveling around the world, spending all their money on credit cards because their Bitcoin was going up so much. They didn't care about their high interest rate and all that. I guess my big fear is that we haven't really seen it's so new that we haven't really seen it play out through a financial crisis. And so, like you mentioned, it being kind of coupled with the markets. And so it kind of trades like a tech stock. And when we've had this huge tech bubble over the last decade, I'm very curious to see how Bitcoin plays through that over these next few years. Now, that doesn't mean that 20 years from now, it's not going to be higher. My point is just we can have rough times along the way. And,
Oh, for sure.
like just like Amazon, people lost a shit ton of money on Amazon, but that doesn't mean Amazon didn't become the global powerhouse it is today, you know?
Absolutely. I still always say, always, 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 I still always say that you you just never should have any money in crypto that you can't afford to lose, you
Yeah.
know? And it's just I have that problem that a lot of Bitcoiners have, which is where I'll sort of go, well, I could buy like $100 worth of Bitcoin. What's the big deal if I do that right now? And you sort of, you kind of want to scrounge around and get a little bit more Bitcoin here and there. But I would never, Sailor famously said that you should take out a loan against your home and buy Bitcoin. And like, I would never do that. I would never tell anybody to do that. But if I sort of, if I had, how would I say this? If I, if I had like a second mortgage or a lien out against like a house, let's say that's worth $100,000 or whatever, I
Mhm.
think that instead of paying, if I had $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, instead of selling that and getting the house back, I would rather pay the 1.6% or whatever it is on the money from the house and keep the Bitcoin rather than ditch the Bitcoin because the Bitcoin is going up, you know? But
Right.
I think let me put it this way, to put yourself in debt to get Bitcoin is not something that I would ever recommend to anybody. But if you have money that you can put somewhere, uh, and it's just a matter of allocation of that money, I would put it in Bitcoin. I mean, I really would. And I think it's tough. It's tough to have seen it and thought, I mean, I think at 8,000, I was like, well, I really missed the boat on this thing, but, maybe one day it'll make it to 16,000,
Mhm.
this like literally. But, oh, I was also going to say to your point about you talk about in 2013, but you didn't, it's like when it was $8,000, if I was going to buy 10 Bitcoin, even one is crazy to people that you would spend $8,000 on something that's just not real to everybody. But
Yeah.
to buy $80,000 worth of Bitcoin, would be like insane. That would have been, people would have said, in fact, my father, people around me would have been like, you're a fucking idiot. You're crazy. This is the worst mistake you're going to ever make, you know? And
Mhm.
so each year, we are like, oh, I wish I would have bought it in 2015 or something. Well, in 2015, you wouldn't, when it was worth $200, you'd have to be so prescient to both buy a lot of it, right? Like a hundred of them, and to keep them that long. Because when it was $200, once it was $2,000, you got to sell it. You want to sell all, especially if you have a bunch of Bitcoin, you got to sell all of it. You're going to make 100 grand. Like, it's like, that's
Right.
kind of how it's skewed. And so I think Kate and I have been lucky to have been on the same page, in the sense that we're like, we're not going to sell this. And that was just, and that's another thing of what you're saying. It's like, I only will buy Bitcoin when I know that this money is not going to have to be sold for it, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I
Right.
know that I'm not going to have to sell this Bitcoin to like cover this thing or that thing, you know?
You, but I actually haven't bought Bitcoin. The only Bitcoin I have is from people buying my documentaries with Bitcoin. Um,
Awesome.
but that, yeah, so it's not,
I think that's so cool. And that's more in
but
line with the philosophy. You know what I'm
yeah, but I like, so like going back to when we released our first film in 2019, we released at the Angelica Film Center, which was fucking awesome.
saying?
But my
That's
producer,
so great. It's the perfect. That's
yeah,
perfect.
it was. I grew up on Kevin Smith movies, and that's where he saw Richard Linklater's Slacker that inspired Clerks, and he also premiered Clerks there. But yeah, so that was amazing. But anyway, my producer David Tice is a big gold silver guy. He started the hedge fund Prudent Bear Fund, and was like well known for predicting the .com collapse. And what he said in 2019 is just put 3 to 5% of your savings or investments in it, because who cares? Like if you lose that 3 to 5%, who cares? But if it does end up being this institutional thing that takes off, like then there you go. You know, it overtakes all your other gains or losses. Are you into gold and silver at all, or are you not interested in that?
I did a gold note. You know, I have a traditional sort of wealth guy. So I have a
Mm-hmm.
broker and all that. So I have, the majority of my assets and our sort of, not even retirement, but the majority of our sort of assets are in um traditional equities,
Mm-hmm.
stocks and, not even bonds, mostly just stocks. And silver and gold was never anything that I was super into, because my guy is like, I owned some BlackBerry a year or two ago. And the guy's kind of, finding value. It's more of a sort of Warren Buffett type approach
Yeah.
to savings. But I was talking to somebody recently, and that, um, they said that their broker was like, or no, what they say? They're like, it was like, how much of your money is in crypto, like in Bitcoin versus your traditional assets? And the dude was like, about 50-50. And somebody was like, what? That's insane. That's so dangerous. And he was like, no, no, no. It didn't start that way. It's just that my Bitcoin and crypto holdings have grown
Mm-hmm.
so much while traditional equities have grown not that much, that it's like this, like they caught up to each other almost, because there's so much value in blockchain as a whole. But Bitcoin, the idea that we went to Michael Saylor's 100K New Year's Eve party, and he kind of, it's like he knew it was going to get to 100,000, but
Mm-hmm.
the vibe the entire night, I mean, he has this fabulous villa in Miami Beach and all this stuff and a yacht and everything. Um, but the vibe at the party was still kind of like, can you fucking believe this is happening? Like
Mm-hmm.
$100,000 Bitcoin. Like, it was so crazy to us. And then, now 122 or something like that, and it's just chugging along. I don't know if this cycle it'll make it to 250,000, but it's very, very possible. I do believe that by 2030 it'll be worth $1 million a coin. I do think that's true.
Yeah. Honestly, my answer to that is I don't know. I have no idea. That was like the big thing I learned from interviewing all these uh incredible like investors. Like Jim Rogers is one of the best investors of the 20th century. And like all these people that like I thought I was gonna go to them and they were just gonna be like, this is how I predicted the housing crash and like this and this and this. And the biggest takeaway that they gave me was like, I don't know. Nobody can like predict how hundreds of millions of people are going to make decisions and all that. So yeah, I mean, I would love to see it keep going up. I think gold and silver is something that people should also like have in their portfolio. My mom recently talked to her retirement advisor about it, and he's like, nobody's asked me how to buy physical gold and silver in my 12 years of doing this job or whatever. And so I think these last 15 years, people have kind of, obviously a lot of that money that would have gone into gold and silver has gone into Bitcoin. But I think that like if you go back to the peak of the dot-com bubble in 2000 or around 2000, or you go back to the peak of the housing boom, like gold and silver outperformed the stock market since then, which is a sign that like these aren't normal times because gold and silver is just supposed to be like money, like just savings, it's not supposed to be like a speculative thing. Like I view Bitcoin as more of like a speculative, like you're investing in the potential of something, whereas gold and silver is more of just a way of not losing your money to inflation.
I do think that we're in a situation where I don't think there's going to be a stock market crash. Obviously, I don't know. Nobody knows. But something is wrong where we
Yeah.
have the debt that we like our debt is like increasing by trillions of dollars. And it's just like, it's just something. And the stock market like isn't reacting to reality. And that's been
Hmm.
going on for years. That has not just been going on this year or something, but it's almost like it's just a fantasy land. They just are like, well, and it almost is kind of like, well, we can always print more money. We can always get more
Yeah.
debt. And that's just not going to work. Somebody's going to come and say it's time to pay the piper. So I do think we're on the precipice of something that is like that. But if that's the case, then you want Bitcoin all the more because it will crash with everything else, but its scarcity will remain the same.
They have to keep printing money. They lock themselves in a corner, and that's really what my documentary trilogy is about: is using those people that predicted the housing crash to tell the story of the bigger bubble and how we got to this point. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is it's not the 80s and 90s anymore. Like we've had 25 years where they just replaced one bubble after another. We had the dot-com bubble, we had the housing bubble, and now we have this bigger bubble that we've been living in. And it's like it was in 2020. Like you can't just pay people to sit home and not do anything and just print money. Like that doesn't add up. Like you got to produce things and make things. And what you're saying about the debt, like there's just no way. Like even if they wanted to cut spending, which nobody actually does, like they'd have to cut spending by 50%, and they'd still run into problems a few years down the road because all the promises they've made, like going forward, are just out of control, like with Social Security and Medicare and everything. Like there's no solution to it, in my opinion. So I do agree with you there that like uh Bitcoin, as long as there's interest in it, like the dollar has benefited from being the world reserve currency in other countries and people in other countries being like, oh, that's the safe haven. But it doesn't seem to be that way anymore. Like we saw stocks like start to crash just a little bit earlier this year, and usually people run into the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds, and they didn't do that. So like I think you're right that like this is a different time. Like it's not the 80s and
And
90s anymore.
it's the Trump component of it is just he is too crazy, too unpredictable, too like impetuous. and capricious and various other words that I used on the SATs, but he's not adding any stability. And so that the less stable the United States is, the less stable the dollar is, and the
Yeah.
more, yeah, I mean, I think that is actually tying back to your first question. That is something that I think is really important that you get from Bitcoin is that it just has the stability. And because of that, it is a hedge against the inflationary component of the dollar, which is just like the worthlessness or worth of it.
Have you heard of Ross Ulbricht? I did want to ask you about. Did you see him speak in Las Vegas?
I mean, I don't, he should
Mhm.
never have been in jail. You
Yeah.
can't punish the grocery store for somebody giving rotten milk or, like salmonella eggs or something, because it's not them. They didn't farm the eggs. They didn't bring the eggs in. They didn't. So I thought that was really, it's just what was happening on it was so completely illegal. Um, and there was some pretty heinous shit happening on there. And so I think that whoever the judge was just was like, I'm going to make an example of you. The fact that you made this possible is.
We should mention what he did. He started Silk Road, the dark web portal where you could buy and sell things online using Bitcoin. And this was way back in like 2011, 2012.
It was.
Um, yeah, but the reason I brought him up is because like man, how things have changed where back then, like, they wanted to make an example out of him, obviously, because they gave him a double life sentence with no possibility of parole for just making a website. And it's not like there was like sex trafficking or like stuff with children going on there or like murders or anything. Like, it was just a website where people that wanted to voluntarily transact were able to do that with Bitcoin. But yeah, I think the big factor was they wanted to make an example out of him with Bitcoin.
But
And as far as
to
the
be
judge, yeah,
right, just to be fair and to be clear, there was sort of contract killing, even though it never happened, I don't think. But and there was I think there was like some child pornography. There's a lot of drugs. You could buy drugs on there. There was some pretty like illicit shit going on there. Um, and so all of that was then put on him as if he had done all of that stuff. But it was primarily drugs. It wasn't like a kiddie porn website. It's just you could buy and sell anything on there. And so mostly it was drugs. It's just people would say, I have ecstasy. Can you send it to me? Yes, you send me Bitcoin. I'll send you the ecstasy. That was it. That's what's happening, which was illegal. But I think, yeah, as you were saying, they tried to make an example of him as if he did something that now that he went to jail forever, then other people wouldn't make a website like that. And it's like, no, it's the dark web. There's
yeah. So the contract thing, there was a prosecutor that mentioned that he tried to have a contract killing put out. But if you go to freeross.org, they like discuss that, and that never was brought to court, and that wasn't like the evidence of that is not what
no,
I
I don't,
believe
I don't,
substantial. But
no, I don't think he did any of that. I'm saying there was like the way they did it is it would be a death pool, and if you could correctly guess the date that this person was going to die, and it would just be a
oh wow,
you could correctly guess the
I
date.
hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
So if you guess the date that the person is murdered, then essentially it would be you that murdered them, and then you would get
Mm.
paid in Bitcoin for that. Like they would lock it in up like that. But like I haven't heard any. I think that I read like there have been no like confirmed cases of that ever actually leading to a murder. So kind of what
Mm.
you're saying, it's like a lot of it was just hearsay. And I think what it came down to is it was a place to buy and sell anything, and mostly people bought and sold drugs.
Yeah.
That's what people really want to do.
So one thing that leads me into is the privacy of Bitcoin. Like, do you believe that like if you were buying drugs over and over, like do you think Bitcoin is still like something that you would want to do that with, or is it something where that would just like it kind of gives that digital record where they can tie you to more than one crime? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Bitcoin is that first of all, I wouldn't buy anything with it because I consider it sort of
Yeah.
a reserve. You know, it's a goal, it's a stockpile, right? Um, but I think that the ledger component is interesting that you could sort of see, but there is an anonymous component to it, which is that once you send it to an address, it's gone. It is in that wallet, and you can take it and put it in a different wallet or put it in a ledger or whatever, and then it's gone. There's no, there's that joke about if you get divorced and your wife is like, I want half of the Bitcoin. You're like, I don't know where it is. I lost it. I was on a
Yeah.
boat.
Right.
Just it fell off the boat. I don't know. I can't tell you where it is. And it's like they can't do anything. There's no way that they could try and backtrack. Well, he sent it to this address, or whatever, but it does both. I guess is my answer.
Yeah.
That's part of the functionality of it, and the operability allows for both of those things to be part of use case scenarios for the digital currency in terms of that. But I don't know that I think we may have crossed the point of no return with people using it like a currency. I think we're closer to Ethereum being that, buying and
Hmm.
selling things for Ethereum. But it's just like, yeah, this reminds me, there's this guy, a Bitcoiner in Calgary who's friends with BTC Sessions, and he I was talking to him and he was like, all right, do you want to hear my story? Well, yes, of course, because I love stories, obviously. And he's like, well, I was really interested in Bitcoin as a currency, as a means of exchange. And he was like, and I started my business and I needed furniture for my office. So I spent 30,000 Bitcoin and I got all the furniture for my office. And I'm like,
Yeah.
30,000? He's like, yep, that's my story.
That's rough.
It's so rough. But I talked to him about it. And he's like, but you know what? I don't, all these guys stand by this because they were there early, and again, like I'm saying, like he never could have imagined each Bitcoin was worth, because I think it was worth 50 cents or something at that point, or
Yeah.
whatever it was. So to him, the idea that an individual coin that's worth like $1 would be worth 100,000 times more than that, it just didn't compute, and it shouldn't have. There's no way to possibly tell. But yeah, he would be a multi billionaire now if he had held on to that Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, I think that's why I got really into the space, is it's like one of the most fascinating things of all time. It is so fascinating. And I didn't read the Bitcoin standard until like a year ago or something. People always laugh at
Mhm.
me about that. They're like, what? What do you mean? And it's like, I just didn't. I learned about it from every other place. So then when I finally listened to
Yeah.
the Bitcoin standard, it just blew my fucking mind, dude. I was like, oh my God. So it was cool.
That's awesome. So would you describe yourself as a Bitcoin evangelical, or would you not go that far? Like, are you, if somebody disagrees with you on it, I guess I would say, are you going to spend your time trying to change their mind, or are you just, if you want to talk about, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I wouldn't say I'm an evangelist of it, in the sense that I'm not going around preaching about it. I think I'm more
Mhm.
likely to be like, you should buy Bitcoin, and then
Yeah.
sort of leave it at that. I think I'm done being the guy who argues with somebody who's like, yeah, forget it. But I think also, dude, like passing 100,000, having the ETFs happen, and most people don't understand this, but the idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve here in the United States, but less like sovereign governments, although that will be huge, just the idea of Bitcoin treasury firms, and it's, you know what I mean, like companies that are treasuries. Um, it's kind of, there's nothing left to argue about. You get like my father, he read the Bitcoin Standard. I had him read it, and he kind of is like, this just isn't worth anything. Like
Mm,
stocks and bonds reflect a company. Gold has a, you know the arguments. And so he's just
mm,
never gonna, he's always gonna think that it's this thing that's kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? And
right.
it
Right.
doesn't mean that, it's not that he doesn't think it's gonna, it's clearly made me, it's clearly a good decision. I clearly have made a good decision. But I think to him it's kind of like, but you have beanie babies at the right time, sort of.
Hmm.
Is I think
Yeah.
kind of what he sees it as is like, or what's Kate as Lula Bulu? Do you know that
I
thing?
don't even know what that is.
Lula Lula Bula? Fucking my wife knows about it. But it's like, it's a new kind of thing, and it's dolls and you want to have them, and they're, it's a big like beanie baby thing. But it's, my father kind of doesn't understand that, like, the way that it's designed is it's not tulips in, the Dutch tulip craze. It isn't
Mm,
that. It's, and I think it's hard for people to understand because there's never been anything like it. So when you try and explain something to somebody and there's never been anything like it, it's, yeah, it's just like it's a different deal. Like I'm doing something right now in the blockchain space, which is not, it's an entertainment thing, but it's designed to do this thing that no one had ever thought of. And in the last like 2 weeks, it's been melting my mind because I'm just like, wait, so these two things, function of operability and mimetic sort of cultural, those two things can go together. Like what? But it's like when something is something that no one's ever seen, it's just really hard to explain it to them. I just, it kind of just isn't. Yeah, it's strange. It's a strange thing.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody knows, you know? All you can do is watch it
That's
play
your
out. And
favorite.
as it's played out, it
That's your
is. It
favorite.
is.
It's Jimmy
But
Morrison.
you mentioned your dad, and so my podcast is Let Us Disagree with Jimmy Morrison, and the idea is that if you talk to anybody long enough, you're going to disagree on things. But the idea of my podcast is just giving people a chance to like talk about things they're passionate about and their authentic selves. And so it's not necessarily an evangelical thing because it's more like, here's my story, take it or leave it kind of thing. And so you mentioned your dad, and you've talked before about how he's more of an evangelical atheist. And correct me if I'm, mischaracterizing what you said, but he's more, or has been more of an evangelical atheist. And you have a little bit different of a worldview. Can you tell me and everybody else about absurdism and your philosophy there?
Hey, okay, thanks, buddy. Yeah, my father is sort of, we were raised atheists, and my mother was an agnostic. Um, but our family was sort of an atheist family. And I kind of, out of that, sort of found my way to absurdism, which is basically nihilism with a smile, sort of. And I think that it's not, nihilism is kind of one step further than atheism because it says not only is there no God, there's no nothing. There's just not anything. And so from there, to take that leap, because I'm a Nietzschean nihilist, a positive nihilist, to get through that, you go into that abyss where nothing is anything, takes a lot of like courage and forward motion, and it's just, it takes a lot. And but once you get to the other side of it, then you can, you realize that if nothing means anything, then anything can mean everything. And so you kind of decide to build, once you've stripped everything down, now you can build meaning out of anything. Your life can be about your children, or being a teacher, or being a preacher, or what. So to me, an atheist is the exact same as a Catholic in the sense that they
Mhm.
decide to make this the meaning because all of it's made up, you know? And so my father would kind of, I don't think he would disagree with that. I've actually never talked to him about this. But I think he would kind of go, well, whatever. But I mean, if nothing means anything, then what's the point of everything? And so nihilism, like Bitcoin, can be a little bit difficult to explain because you're sort of saying nothing means anything. And people are like, then what's the point? It's like, no, that's exactly the point. Now you have this kind of freedom to be able to build up your meaning and create your own life. Well, you become a god, really, if you think about it. Um,
Mhm.
and so the absurdist sort of version of that is that not only none of this means anything, but also it's just ridiculous. This whole situation, the fact that we're animals that can think and and feel like there needs to be meaning in our lives, and just all of it is so fucking silly, and so if you can do that, then you sort of then you can have a really good time with the fact that it's all so absurd. And that comes from Eugene Ionesco, was my main influence with regards to that, because
Okay.
he the pioneer in absurdist theater, and he was an existentialist, and but I think it's really important, and it's been very freeing for me because instead of rolling my eyes at religious people, which is what my father does, I'm kind of like, good on you. If that's what's making you feel safe and good and like everything is meaningful, then that's good. Keep at it, Tiger.
Yeah, you see the value, like you realize that they can value something differently than you do, right? You're not trying to like mold everybody into your worldview because that's how
Yeah.
it gets meaning. It's by making everybody have the same opinion.
And then you don't, as a nihilist, what you don't do is you don't go, well, of course, Catholicism is bullshit. I mean, none of it's real. You just kind of don't do that because you don't need to do it because of what you said. You're not like, it's all bullshit, right? Because there's no party that's like, well, I actually know the real way. I actually know the real thing, and that's that there's no God and science is the most important thing and all this stuff. But Nietzsche was dangerous because he really believed in the revaluation of values in the sense of being like, why is slavery bad? Is it bad? Or has it been around for most of history? And it's just right now we think it's bad. And
Hmm.
when you say that to people now, I wouldn't say that in public, actually. Like not at a cocktail party. I'll say it to you because you've got cool records behind you. But I sort of that's how hardcore Nietzsche was. He talks a lot about mastery, and there's all this stuff. Like he did not believe that in democracy. He thought that that was insane, that you would let all the stupid people vote as well as the smart ones, which is Plato felt the same way in the Republic. And these are guys who do not align with our current values. And he was never. His sister tried to make him somebody that um that she pretended like he was in line with like Hitler's thinking. And it's like, no, he would not. To him, Hitler would be sort of the worst use of all of this. Just would be completely. It's to Nietzsche, what Hitler did in the way that he was doing it was the worst way that you could. He kind of abhorred being German. It's actually Prussian, but you know, to Nietzsche, it's almost like Nazi Germany, uh, Saudi Arabia, and de- American democracy. Those are all, you didn't quite get it right. Those are all, you're doing it the wrong way for each of those. But it is scary to say to somebody, look at all your values and are they real? Is it true that you shouldn't kill people? And what Nietzsche asks is like, really think about that. Don't think of what you've been taught.
Mhm.
really think about the thing in and of itself. And so that's super scary. So that's why I try and not do a lot of like, well, Catholicism, if you were born in, India, then you'd be Hindu. You wouldn't even be Catholic. So you wouldn't believe in any of that stuff. And it's just, it doesn't, I'd rather make them laugh. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I guess that kind of transitioned into something I really wanted to ask you about. Like, why did you get into comedy? Like why did you want to be a comedian? And obviously you've done so much other stuff with film and everything, but it seems like throughout your career you've made stand-up comedy the priority over and over again, where you've, walked away from one of the most amazing shows HBO's ever done. Um, so when you started out, why did you get into comedy? Has that changed over the years?
Well,
Yeah.
I was very funny, was sort of the beginning of all this. But yeah, I just liked making people laugh, and that transitioned into, wow, he's pretty good on stage and doing school plays and stuff. And that transitioned to, let me try out for the comedy group at my college. And then that transitioned into, what do I want to do? Do I want to become a psychologist and help like 500 people and instrumentally change their lives, over the course of their entire lives? Or do I want to um, help hundreds of millions of people, but in smaller increments, just make them happy for 60 seconds or an hour and a half or 45 minutes or whatever the medium is? Um, and I just decided like the best thing that I could do was, and this is utilitarian ethics, which is John Stuart Mill, and it's, you want to make the most amount of people the most happy. So that ethically, that's what you do, and you stock up everything to that. So that's why a utilitarian would be like, murder is okay if you're killing Hitler, you know,
Mm.
because that will make the most amount of people the most happy. So
Yeah.
that's what I wanted. I got in it to kill Hitler. That's why somehow I keep talking about Hitler on a Bitcoin podcast about my comedy philosophy. Uh, but it's, it felt like that was the best thing I could do. And I just loved it too. I mean, it's so fun making people laugh, but like when stand up is going well, it is so fun.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like as a filmmaker, like I'm trying to tell a story. Obviously, I want the audience to like feel emotions and, grow in some way from that story. But like with comedy, like yeah, it matters what's funny to you, but really like it matters what's funny to the audience. So it's kind of that interesting dynamic of you're trying to reach people, like not sell out, but you're trying to like reach people the most effective way, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's why I did Yogi Bear 3D.
Well,
Yeah.
I gotta mention, are you a Mission Impossible fan?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so obviously they just had that last one come out, and so I went through and watched all of them over again, but they kind of ripped you guys off with like having a bike go off a cliff and having them free fall trying to grab somebody midair and save them with parachute. Like you guys were way ahead of your time on those stunts.
Just like with Bitcoin, way ahead of our time.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I guess the only other thing I wanted to talk about before I let you go is we were just talking about the audience and comedy and everything. You lived through lockdowns in New York City. What were the lockdowns like for you, and did that change your way of thinking at all? How did that affect the way you do comedy?
Well, it did. It was affecting in the sense that I got to hang out with my wife a lot, which was really cool. Um, and so that was wonderful, but it was so fucking scary because we didn't know how long it was going to last. And the way that I make a living is by packing large amounts of people in small spaces and having them all breathe heavily forward. So it was really scary. And we just hemorrhaged cash for a while. And that was really scary.
Hmm.
But we got through it. And I think what happened, and Kate and I were talking about this 2 nights ago or something, And what happened was we sort of like, I was just thinking about her. She's so funny. Uh, I left and performed as soon as I can. So I went to all the crazy places that were open. So Texas and Florida and Tennessee and all that. And it was pretty dangerous because she's like immunocompromised a little bit, so to
Mm.
speak. But I really felt like it was such a scary time that if people wanted to come together and laugh, that it was really important for me to do that. And she agreed. And so I
Mm.
kind of went on the road and we had to spend a lot of time apart once I was able to start touring because I would come home and have to quarantine from her and we just and then I get the PCRT test and we'd get to spend really just one night together. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just felt like it was really important to make people laugh at that point. And so when I saw people and I saw how grateful they were, I really came to understand like, and then she would get really mad because she'd be like, these people aren't locking down or they're saying that it isn't real and it's a pandemic and all this. And I just said to her, listen, different people get scared in different ways. And I think that helped her understand a little bit because I understand people a lot because that's kind of what comedy is. It's sort of observation and psychological evaluation. And it's really, it's very, very strange, but you have to know a lot about people to make fun of them, you know? And, uh, and so I helped her kind of understand that. And then, I think if anything, it just makes me so grateful when I go to places and, when I go to places and and people are coming to see me and there's always ticket sales are down across the board. And, there's kind of always that conversation. But that's the other thing that I'm scared about is I don't want the stock market to crash or something like that, because then people will not buy tickets to my show because I'm
Mm.
one of the more expensive acts to see. Um, and so I don't know what's going to happen. I try and remind Kate and myself that all the time that like, as my buddy Jimmy Morrison says, like, you just don't know. You don't know. So we really try and like, you know, um, yeah, we really try and like, just, yeah, prepare, but go from day to day. And to me, it's like, it, I always say people are like, well, would you ever sell your Bitcoin? I'm like, yeah, you sell your Bitcoin when it's going to change your life. And something can be life changing, like having kids, but it can also be life changing to own a car outright. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Wait, hold on. This is going to be amazing if this is the case. I'm waiting for a call from Ryan Reynolds.
Me
So,
too.
yeah, exactly. So it's just so funny because I have this like saga, it's ongoing Ryan Reynolds saga. And so me and my buddy were laughing. We went to this dinner last night about how now, because I called Ryan last night and left a message. So now sort of waiting by the phone for Ryan to call. And it doesn't matter when he calls. I've got a lot of things to do. I'm going to wash my hair. I'm going to do, so we've just been laughing about that. But yeah, I mean, we just, we don't want to sell our Bitcoin. We don't want to do that. But having it gives you the ability to sell it, you know? And
Mm.
I don't try and time the market anymore. I'm as guilty as anyone of buying in a bull market and not buying in a bear market, although I do both. But like, I just, why wouldn't you get Bitcoin? Why wouldn't you buy $5 worth of Bitcoin? That's what I tell everybody. Just buy $5.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great place to end. TJ Miller, you value Kate and Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, thanks so much, man. This has been great, and I think people are going to learn a lot from it. So I appreciate you taking the time.
All right, thanks, Betty. See you, Jimmy.
Take a greater risk on these mortgages? Yes. to give families mortgages who they would not have given otherwise? Yes.
It means we use the mighty muscle of the federal government in combination with state and local governments to encourage owning your own home. That's what that means.
I ask all of you just one more time to look at that chart. And I wish I had a lot of other charts to show you that would reinforce that.
You can't buy a house before you have a job.
You get a job, you save for a down payment, then you buy the house. A lot of people are going to find out, oh my God, not only is my stocks down, my house is down too, and now what do I do?
Jim Rogers knew these bubbles were going to burst, but I didn't. Neither did filmmaker Jimmy Morrison, who started a house painting business less than a month after home prices peaked. His timing couldn't have been worse. But we don't have to make those mistakes again. There are people out there who called it, and next time, maybe we can too.
We've got a growing economy, jobs, incomes. We've got very low mortgage rates.
Housing is going to be a disaster in the next 5 years. You sell housing stocks and you sell Ben Bernanke.
One myth that's out there is that what we're doing is printing money. We're not printing money.
These days, they don't need a printing press. All they need a computer keyboard.
So we're not a free market then. There is an invisible, there is a benevolent hand that touches us.
Absolutely.
These people in the government apparently don't learn anything at all.
They broke it, and they're trying to fix it by doing more of what broke it in the first place.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that.
What?
Of course it could happen again, and it's happened before.
Raw materials were allocated between essential and non-essential business.
I hope they don't lose confidence in their government. I can see why there's skepticism, but it's the only government we got.
All this has happened before, and it will all happen again.
The reality is we have gone from a stock market bubble. Now we have a housing bubble, and when it breaks, whatever causes it to pop, then a lot of people are going to find out, oh my God, not only are my stocks down, my house is down too, and now what do I do?
Charlie, this was the day we were afraid to wake up to: the bankruptcy of one major Wall Street investment bank, the shotgun wedding of another.
Can't be distracted. What's going on with the war? What's wrong with the economy? Stop worrying about that.
They're not only doing the wrong thing, they're doing exactly the opposite of the right thing. We got into our mess by spending too much money, running up too much debt, and printing too much money, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Which, by the way, would seem how we got into this state of affairs in the first place.
You have to work for money, kids.
No, you don't. It comes from the machine in the wall. I've seen it. Yeah, you just have to push buttons.
I don't think the economy is actually doing well. That's the problem. It's just the illusion. It's the stock market going up. It's the real estate market going up. It makes people think the economy is doing well, but it's actually doing lousy.
Basically, quantitative easing has been a wonderful boon for the 1%. It's caused the markets to soar, but it's not helped the real economy.
Quantitative easing is a very fancy phrase for what an ordinary civilian might call money printing. It's a euphemism, essentially, for printing money and buying up mortgage instruments, buying up treasuries.
What we're doing is lowering interest rates by buying treasury securities. And by lowering interest rates, we hope to stimulate the economy to grow faster.
Over time, it becomes habit forming. The politicians can't live without it. Eventually, it begins to degrade.
Give me some of that quantitative easing, brother.
I don't think they'll wind it back voluntarily. I think one stimulus package will lead to the next one and to more money printing.
Ben Bernanke didn't magically undo all those mistakes by creating $1 trillion and giving it to bankers. Right? Those mistakes were still made, resources had still been misallocated, and all he really did was literally paper over the problem and push it back a few years.
So the trick is to find the appropriate moment when to begin to unwind this policy. And that's what we're going to do.
Why should a bunch of people sitting around the conference room of the Federal Reserve Building in Washington, D.C. know better about the proper level of interest rates than they know about the proper level, say, of corn prices.
The truth of our world, Max, it can't be easily summed up with math. There is no simple path.
Guys, the truth is way more depressing. They're not even smart enough to be as evil as you're giving them credit for.
I hope they don't lose confidence in their government. I can see why there's skepticism, but it's the only government we got.